credit union.
We in America should be grateful to God for the blessings He's given us.
Don't let anyone tell you that America's best days are behind her.
We have got to fight for this nation because I believe with all my heart this nation is, in fact, one nation under God.
I was just thinking, listening to that opener, I never listened to it. Billy Graham and Ronald Reagan. I don't think it gets a whole lot better than that. But anyway, we have Craig Haggart with us. We're going to forego our news break that we do here and just spend the time here with Craig talking about some commodities for our ranchers, our farmers, and some investors. And Craig, welcome. Thanks for coming on. We sure appreciate it. You know that.
Well, thank you. I was just thinking we're going from Billy Graham and Ronald Reagan down to Dan and Craig.
I know. Wow.
Quite
yeah.
a step back.
What a tough act to follow. Yeah. That's
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, brother. Yeah. Good. Craig, I'm thinking about the supply chain, and we hear so much about that, and I know it's impacting grains, and I'm just thinking about moving. I'm thinking about moving grains, rail cars, trucks. Are you seeing? Is that causing inflation to commodities right now, and causing a problem?
I think what we're seeing, and just from a personal perspective, in the month of November, the company that I work for, we loaded 22 trains of grain during the month, which is a lot of grain and a lot of movement. What we are finding is that rail is not performing real well. There were some cases where we'd load a train, and in one case it sat there for a week before they came to pull it. That was heading to a feed mill in North Carolina that ran out of feed in the meantime. And, of course, these animals like to eat every day. So there's been a lot of problems with that. What we are seeing now is that with elevators, especially during the middle of harvest, plugged or really full of grain and needing to get trains in to move the grain out so they can accept more farmer grain. And so there was kind of a two-tiered market perhaps. There was, if the trains were moving and you could get immediate train, it would trade at one price. If it was more of a, ship sometime in the next 2 weeks, it would be another price. So it's definitely, I think the rail situation has certainly complicated harvest for producers. It's complicated, production flow on the other end as well. In some cases, actually running feed mills out of grain when they desperately needed it. So it's definitely been anything but smooth there.
What about fertilizer? I know that you had mentioned to me about tariffs being placed on some fertilizers. It seems like by our government, it seems like horrible timing. And what's that going to do to the availability? Is it? I mean, we don't have that much. We're struggling. That's
right. Availability is a huge issue, and we've talked the last couple months about that price. Nitrogen fertilizer, UAN, is a product that we really need for corn production. Last month we were at real high levels. Since we talked a month ago, it's up another 26%. Anhydrous ammonia up 33% from the last time we talked. I think the national average right now for anhydrous is $1,308 per ton, which is the highest national average price we've ever seen for that product. And then on Wednesday, we had the Commerce Department come out and announce that they're probably going to put duties on the nitrogen fertilizer that's coming from Russia and from Trinidad and Tobago because the accusation was that those two nations have been subsidizing it unfairly and basically getting it in here cheaper than the competition. And so they're going to slap duties on that, which, of course, is going to get passed on to the end user. And just going to accelerate that price even more.
Wow. I guess, is there a threat that next spring could be we could see a lot less acres planted?
At this point, nothing that we're seeing indicates that. In fact, what really scares me, Dan, is there was a University of Illinois study that came out earlier this week. And they're actually predicting that corn acres will be up 3% over this past year, which really doesn't make sense when we look at the fertilizer constraints.
Right.
And not just fertilizer, but the chemicals, the crop protection. Glyphosate, for example, is in very short supply, it seems like. There's some real big issues with that supply chain and having the fertilizer and chemicals that you need for that crop. So I think that'll have an impact, but the studies right now would indicate that we're going to be going full speed ahead on acres. Now, if that happens, my worst fear probably is that producers don't exercise good risk management. You end up buying fertilizer at these high levels, for example, and don't sell any grain against it, and you get to next fall, and we do have a record crop in South America and increased acres here in the U.S. And, right now I think the December 2022 futures are at about $5.50 a bushel for corn. We get into a situation a year from now we're harvesting corn, we're at $3.80 a bushel or something, and we've used all these high-priced inputs. It could be really, really bloody from a bottom-line perspective. So I guess my encouragement to producers would be if you're booking fertilizer at these levels, maybe sell enough bushels of new crop corn next year to offset that cost. Because there's the possibility this could turn into a kind of a worst-case scenario where you pay way too much for the inputs and then have pretty cheap prices when a year from now harvest rolls around.
So I guess that happens even no matter. I know there were some issues with soybean coming out of Brazil this year, right? And I thought that was going to help us. Is that helping us or no?
There was some weather concerns there, but at this point, it doesn't really seem to be helping us. In fact, if you look at, it's usually us and Brazil that are competing for that Chinese business. Right now, as we look at exports, outside of the 2 years where we had the trade wars, where they were really heavily going to China, this is the lowest Chinese purchases we've had, with the exception of those 2 years, in decades. So right now, it seems like Brazil has been very aggressive in selling, and it looks as if this year's crop is going to get harvested a little bit earlier than normal. So I believe if I looked at November, I believe they sold 2.1 million metric tons more to China this year than they did a year ago. And, of course, those are bushels that they pretty much directly took away from the United States. So Brazil's been kind of puzzling. There was definitely weather issues there, but based on the performance we're seeing, they maybe weren't as severe as what people had thought.
So how is all of this affecting, the feeding of our cattle and hogs? That's got to be being impacted as well, right?
Yeah, it is. I think obviously with the crop that we're coming off of, and it looks like we'll probably set a national record for the biggest yield ever. I think the USDA currently has this at 177 bushel an acre on corn. There's going to be plentiful supplies, assuming that the railroads perform and get it to the end user. But if there is a change, we're definitely in a higher price environment. And so the cost of that corn compared to what farmers were paying or ranchers were paying a year or so ago to feed the cattle or the hogs or the chickens is certainly higher than it was. So that is, I'm sure, having an impact.
So you think that the beef prices and the pork prices, even poultry, is that primarily a supply chain bottleneck more than anything else right now?
It was initially. We saw, where it was a year and a half ago when this thing was really blowing up.
Yeah.
You couldn't get kill space for the animals.
Right.
I believe that we've kind of worked through that. I don't think that's as the issue nearly like it was a year and a half ago, Dan.
Yeah. Craig, I sure appreciate you and all that you do for us, for the ministry, and for our great farmers, our ranchers. We appreciate it so much. I know they do. Thank you so much, Craig. Craig, you have a great Christmas if we don't talk to you sooner.